Hello, everybody. This is your host, Aram Melkoumov, and you're listening to another episode of the Product Innovation Series, where every week on the show, we have guests come on and share their stories and wisdom on how to ship a great product. Today, I'm joined by the Senior Product Manager at N26, Edoardo Ferrara-Bardile. N26 is building the first mobile neobank that the world really loves to use, and I'm a big fan. I've been a client for 3 years, so really happy to chat with you today about your experience. Just a little bit of background on Edoardo. He actually doesn't come from a traditional PM background and worked in the HR sector before. And Edoardo's main values, according to what he shared with us, is to listen to people, understand their issues, lead by example, and generate confidence. So, Edoardo, pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome. Okay, so the first question I have for you is, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, that your background didn't come from a traditional PM education. Yeah. So how does somebody like yourself, or somebody who wants to get into the PM world, go into it when they don't come from this traditional background or a technical background?
Yeah, that totally. Yeah, and probably actually when I started being a PM, probably almost no one was coming from a PM education, because now it's very popular and you have PM related educations around that you can do and you become a PM. It was not in my case. I started my first position as a PM as such was 2013, but I started doing similar jobs like either product owner, PMs. It depends on the company. It can be the same or some difference, or sometimes it's just a role and then other thing is a title. But then also you come from business analyst and that's it, and you start going there. But I started more around in that sector in 2010, 2011. To be honest, it was about it's a mix of a casual thing and being curious. So, I don't know, there's a funny video going around, which is a lady walking through the street, and there's, these cars that have the automatic door, and by chance she gets stuck between the door and she gets pulled inside the garage. And someone put, I read somewhere, someone put that this is how I started my career, because it's like that. So you're just walking around and someone pushed inside there. Okay. So that's a bit my case. So as you mentioned, my background in education is something very similar to HR. It depends from where I come from. It had a different name, but it's basically social science oriented to human resources. And I started in standard human resources position, recruitment, compensation management, general admin tasks in a company. I did my internship on that. I worked maybe the first year after I finished my career on that, where I was very curious into technology and how that was changing the world already in 2018, 2019, even before, of course. That was coming from way before. And I started working in the first technology that was familiar to me when I was in HR, which was SAP. That was very popular, still very used, but it was more popular 10 years ago. And I started being as a user there and becoming curious, and becoming better at it. And then I became a consultant on SAP HR, always working on HR. And that you start entering into these positions. When you're a consultant, you're a bit of everything. When you're a consultant, you're a product manager, you are the engineer, you are the trainer, you are the salesperson as well, because you are dragging too many sales meetings for you to propose what we are going to be doing. And that I started back in Venezuela, which is where I come from. And at that moment, it proved to be actually a great decision, because it was the way for me to find a job almost anywhere in the world. So it's technology, it's international, it has things that are different from country to country, but it's basically the same product. And it allows me to get a job in Spain. I was looking for a job around. I wanted to change my life, let's say. And I found a job actually in Barcelona. I didn't know Barcelona. I had been here for a couple of days, maybe in many years ago. But just I say, there's a job there, and I got in there. So I kept working as a SAP consultant, and then I saw that maybe I didn't want to focus only on SAP. I wanted to expand my technology. I didn't know how far SAP will go into being a popular tool. So I say it's better to learn more things. And as mentioned, I'm not a technical person, no intention to be a technical person, although I do like a lot of technical things and try to learn and can do some things on my own because I have learned. But I decided that the best way for me to be, and based on what I was noticing based on feedback and based on what I believe for myself that I was good already is in building bridges and negotiating between what we can do basically, or what can be done, what is possible, and what business wants. So I'm a decent social person. So I like to talk to people. I'm not the most extrovert person, but I like to talk to people, and I like to be a service-oriented person. So I have always been very good in this chat with the business, and I also understand the HR sector, which is still where I was there. And yeah, so I became a business analyst initially in a IT team. I was just, as mentioned, closing the gap between IT and the business. And then we started being agile, and it was the agile fashion all around. And I became a product owner and then a product manager, which in the initial company was two different roles. But basically, it started to become the same. And yes, that's more or less how you go. And yes, I've been almost now 7-8 years strictly as a product manager, and I love it. It gives you the possibility to work in pragmatic sense, but still being creative person, because you need to take your time to think, and you can say, okay, this is 1 hour for me just to think. So you have this mix of, for a person like me, like pragmatic stuff and not super artistic, but also time for me to think and create things.
Awesome. It's a really interesting background on kind of how you came to where you are now. And next question I wanted to ask, I mean, your background, you were doing a lot of things in SAP, so there's a lot of data. And I know that product managers in their day-to-day roles still need to analyze, review, and understand various forms of data, right? I'm sure you're doing that in your current role and your past roles. So I want to ask you, there's two different sayings. There's from a product management perspective, a lot of the PMs I've spoken to, they're very data driven in their decisions, but then other people have been saying that, data is one part, but you need to be data aware. So, from your perspective, how would you kind of compare and contrast the two different mindsets or approaches?
Totally right. And again, not coming from a technical background, data was a difficult part for me at the beginning. Then I discovered the world of SQL, and I learned to SQL a lot. So I became an expert on that, and I became a very data something else person before I answer the question. Because I'm a strong believer on data, and I believe that's probably if you have the access to it, because you are working in a product that is already built, or you have access to certain market research that you can use. Is your first point of entering into a possible problem, I think. But I do strongly believe that data is not the only thing, by far. Before I was saying I was more data oriented. Now I like more the term data aware, because data has two main issues, I would say. So first, it doesn't give you everything. Not for sure, you may have a tons of data, but it won't give you everything. And second, as always, it's highly interpretable. So it's how you will interpret data. So it doesn't mean that data is telling you something. It means that you are having some understanding from the data you have. And that is your bias, your previous experience, your previous knowledge will make you think of data in one way. There are ways to eliminate this concept from your head, but it's a problem that we as humans have. We are not robots, we are humans. We have to be aware of that, so we will interpret that in different ways. So it's very good to have data as I would say, even a first support thing to make decisions. But also, and you will hear stories all around about great product leaders, great product companies that has made amazing things, going against what data was telling them, actually, somehow, or not being fully data-oriented, like having a hunch on something or having some belief. I think probably Airbnb story is one of the biggest ones. Like, they just decided to buy the best camera ever because they were thinking that maybe they were not putting the best photos in their in their apartments that were renting, and that was the decision. There was no data telling them that you need to have the best photos ever. I'm not sure if that story is 100% real. I read that, so you read a lot of fake news, but I'm not sure, but that's what I read. So this is something that data won't tell you, and sometimes someone, because of something that you heard, someone you believe, you try it. And the important thing is that when you have these things, you need to try to go a little bit with either your heart or what your brain is telling you, which not maybe in the data. You just need to try to be quick in understanding if that is going in the right direction or not. So because you cannot always go with, my heart is telling me we should go that way, and this is super a lot of ego on that and strong on that, and then you get to a point after 2 years, maybe it was not the best decision. So you need to be quick on that as well. But
no, it's very interesting. And in your experience, what are things to do to remove bias in decision making when it comes to data, being data aware?
So of course there's one tool in user research that goes a lot with data, and in researching that goes a lot with data, with this user interviews or the qualitative data. Those things you should be able to match it more or less together and try to find what's the direction to go. So it's kind of getting confirmations of what you were initially believing, trying to see if there's other things that will guide you in the same direction or that will contradict what you have seen in the data. So you need to try to match both things. That's on one side. Then the other thing is, and this is, I think, I don't know if it's something that you can learn too, but I think it's super important in product, but I think it's super important in your life, but I think it's super important in product, especially is to be as free as you can of ego, because ego is the thing that is taking you to take decisions at the end, and we all have ego and we will go with it, and that's the reality. But ego and dogma in your life will actually, sometimes it will help you to make good decisions, I will say sometimes, but most times won't allow you to listen others around. And I think it's probably one of the issues we may have in product, which is ego. In product people, I think we product tech people in there, we're in a super amazing sector. We have been growing like crazy. We're on the top of the world, and that can make your ego raise. And sometimes you take decisions that have an amazing impact. You are working in companies that are growing like crazy with amazing value, and you say, we are in the best place ever. And this is, I know how to take decisions, and I can take the decisions, but okay. Take that always into account that maybe you're wrong. This is something that, make sure that you understand that there is a high possibility that you're wrong. Believe in you, but always believing that you may be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Next question I want to ask is a bit different. It's about, I can maybe start off like, as a product studio, we work with a lot of companies who claim themselves to be agile, but in most cases they're really more waterfall, or they're more hybrid, waterfall and agile, somewhere in between. So it's always kind of difficult in order to build product in under certain types of mindsets or methodology. So I want to ask you, I think in your prior experience, you mentioned before that there was companies that promoted themselves as agile, but in reality, they're not abiding or adhering to what the principles are of agile. So as a product manager in those situations, when you're in a company, what can you do in order to navigate through that?
Yes, so let me start with one clarification, which so as a concept, I think we all need to try to be agile, using the word agile, because agile is used about trying to deliver value as soon as possible to the users that you have, and that should be in the mindset of anyone or any company. It should be like, you have an idea based on a problem that you have seen, and you want to give that to users so you can deliver value, and that they can say if it's in the good direction or not. So under that concept, agile is an amazing thing. But it's important also to be clear that every company is different, and you don't need just to follow the trend to follow a specific methodology that is popular at this moment. So agile, maybe talking more about Scrum, like, oh, Scrum is the best method. Maybe it is for many people, but maybe it's not for you. Maybe waterfall can be good for you. Probably I will almost go against that, but I may see at some point that maybe a waterfall project may have sense. I don't know. It has not happened to me in the last years, but I may go into that direction. So for me, the first thing is that companies need to do retrospective, which is an agile agile concept, but I don't mean the agile concept needs to do retrospective into understanding themselves and what they are looking for. What is the best way for us to deliver value? And let's not just buy a preset methodology. Let's not just go with Safe, Scrum, Waterfall. Let's use what we find that is the best for us at this moment and change and adapt to it. You can do a project where you're working in 1 week sprint right now or a Kanban, and then you have another product or another feature that you are working in a different way because you need to do more discovery, you need to have longer pieces of work because you have much more technical backend data information that you need to create. So that may happen. So be honest to yourselves as a company, be honest on what you're looking for, and just adapt to it. Change because you have a team that you have been working in 2 week sprints during the last 6 weeks doesn't mean that you cannot change now to a project where you will work only 2 months, focus on that and deliver something. Maybe you're doing a new product and you don't want to deliver anything in the next 2 weeks. You just want 2 months to deliver a full solution that you will test, a full MVP that you will test. That can happen. And yes, be honest about that. And don't focus on a trend. Look at the market and read a lot about the articles around. There are many good people writing amazing things, so you can take the decision the way you want to work with the most information possible. But being realistic with what you have in your company.
Okay. Next question I have is around discovery. So I've spoken to so many different PMs, and always I get varying answers or approaches. But I want to ask you, how much time should product managers spend in discovery when they're working on a new product, or in also the whole concept of continuous discovery, where they're constantly working on refining their product?
Yeah, I would say that almost as a concept, as little as possible, as a general idea, but that doesn't actually give you an answer because that can be like that. But what you need to do when you're doing discovery, well, a couple of things that I think are quite important. One is that the longer the discovery you do, the farther away you are to actually give a solution that will match what you were actually discovering at the beginning. So you can do a discovery of 1-2 years, and world today move extremely fast. I don't know. I was not working 40 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that 40 years ago, when you were developing something, when you were creating something, you have more time to do discovery, research, put in the market, and then see how it goes. Today, you don't have this time. Everything is faster. Everything you may have an idea today that may be super valuable today and be useless in 1 year from now. So taking that into account, you need to try to shorten discovery so you can deliver things. Which doesn't mean that when you're doing discovery, you are not including certain deliveries to see if the discovery that you're doing is right. So it's a constant loop. So do discovery, but very close together with delivery. As much as you can. Include people from the discovery from the beginning. So your discovery, even if it's long, doesn't feel like you are not delivering anything. Mm-hmm. And actually, it doesn't mean that you are not delivering anything. That's not just discovery. So as a concept, it should be as small as possible. But that doesn't mean that you may spend 1 year on a discovery phase, but that you have in delivery in between. So you are actually testing what you have. That's one thing on discovery. And another thing that you need to do with discoveries, and it's a wording thing, but not necessarily you will do it, but the wording I think is incorrect. That make actually take you to have a bit longer discovery if you're more open. Is sometimes when you do discoveries, what you say, and discover when you deliver something as well, you say that your discovery is to validate your assumptions. So you have assumptions and you want to validate that. And I think that's an incorrect thing to go into discovery, because the work actually validate, although you have a bigger meaning, actually start with a concept that your assumptions are probably right, and you need to just validate that they're right. And when I start discovery, I say, let's do just a discovery with assumptions to see if they are wrong. Just to change a bit the wording, because again, and that's what happens sometimes, and this is a bit with what we were talking before, how do you eliminate bias in data, in user research, in anything you do, quantitative and qualitative. You start with the wording. Don't go into assumptions validation. Go into assumptions that you need to check if they're right or wrong. Because if you start with the concept of validating, you're probably going to find out that your assumptions are right, which is what happens in most of the discoveries, that you started with an assumption and then you just validate that and say, yeah, this is correct. And then that's not necessarily the proper solution.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before I go to some next questions, which are going to be asking more about the product management specifically, I want to ask you about tools. You've been a product manager for a while. What kind of tools have you used that you found to be very useful that help you day to day to make decisions or anything like that? Is there anything you could share?
Yeah, so to be very, very straight about it, and I will share only one because there are plenty of tools that we use on a day-to-day that are very useful. One of the tools that I like the most, and it's going into the data world, is Amplitude. Amplitude is not the only one doing it, it's the one that I have more experience with, because I think it's one of the most powerful ways to actually understand what your users are doing in your product. So of course, Amplitude is more useful when you have already a product. So if you're just not having anything and you want to validate that won't give you that many insights. But when you have a product and you want to see what are the actual issues in your product, where you are dropping your users, when they stop doing something, if you implement it right, Amplitude, it tells you everything, almost everything. Then you need to go into user interviews to try to understand maybe why they don't follow a flow or something. But you have defined that a user to complete an action should do A, B, C, and then you see that 80% of your users stop at B. Amplitude tells you that, and then you know that potentially you have an issue in B. After B, people don't know what to do. Or after B, people go to a help button. Or after B, people just start being angry and move the mouse around like crazy. So missing Amplitude with other tools, you can get all this info, but Amplitude is the first source of information for this, to have data. There is just no feel-good data. It's not like NPS score with you can change in many different ways. It's just data that is valuable for you that can make you feel bad in a good way. Let's say, like, okay, this is where we're doing it bad and we need to change it. But it's good that we know where we're doing it bad.
Okay, Amplitude, yeah, definitely. I'll check it out and we'll link it into this episode. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So before we get into Fireside questions, I want to ask you a question, which I always like asking everybody, is what do you feel product managers or even product directors do that won't get them a great product at the end of the day?
So I answered that first. I think it's ego.
Ego.
Ego. Yeah, I think that's it. You can put it in a nicer word like bias, ego, but it's eliminate that from your mind as much as you can. What you have in your mind is not necessarily a good solution.
And on that note, I mean, what are some of the steps you've seen in the past working on product that were skipped, which led to some poor outcome?
Talking to users. Talking to users, and when I say users, and not only users, it's, because my background is very B2B. So my users are different, but even in B2C, because I also have worked in B2C, I believe that even inside your company, you have a lot of people that know more than you. A lot of people, and talking to them is what will actually help you. So as a product manager, we need to be the owners. We need to know a lot of things, and we need to be super knowledgeable about the sector, the market, the product, and everything. But almost in everything that you need to be super good at, there is someone that knows more than you. So get to that person, because they will tell you the people that is talking, that is solving customer cases, the people that is doing sales, the people that is managing relationship with clients. These people know, not necessarily more than you, but know things that you don't know that will give you amazing information about the things that you need to do.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm going to jump into the fireside question. So the format is question answer. Try to keep it 1 to 2 sentences as a response. Okay. So the first question I want to ask is, how do you ask better questions when building product?
Yeah. Keep it. Start with keeping it open questions. Don't when you try to just get yes or no answer questions, you try to guide that yes or no answer. So if you keep it open, just open, maybe record everything, and then you will listen again, and then you can refine that. But start with open questions.
Okay. What this is an interesting one. What are aspects of product development money can't fix?
Like tons of things, millions of things. So going faster, I would say that going faster, like delivering something faster, money won't give you that. And even if it gives you that, the scenario will give you the right thing. Okay. But most likely won't be able to give you that.
Okay, awesome. And over the years as being a PM, what are specific things you've become better at saying no to?
So basically, use of urgent things coming into my plate. So in a very nice way, I negotiate. I'm a good negotiator, and I always give something in exchange. But anything that comes as urgent thing probably have the wrong solution in it. And I just to take into account, I have worked in highly regulated industry with urgency things happening like HR, payroll sector, now in banking. If you don't pay a salary, it's a very impactful thing. If you don't do a transfer, it's a very impactful thing. So, but we need to learn to say no to this is urgent. Okay, let's see what we can do.
Okay. If you could only, and if you were only to work 5 hours a week on something in product, what would you want to spend those 5 hours on?
That's with the beginning of the interview, data. Probably, sorry about saying that. But if I could only work 5 hours, I will spend probably at least 60-70% of it on data. Because if you don't have the time to do more, I think data is the most powerful. As mentioned, I think we should be data aware. But I would say like 60-70% in data, and the 30% talking to users or subject matter experts.
Okay, love it. What is there any controversial views you hold in your profession as a product manager?
So to put it like that, not. Again, aligned with what we were saying before, agile, Scrum, or any method around agile is not good just because it's popular. Maybe it's not that controversial because many people have this belief, but okay. Adapt to yourself.
All right, adapt to yourself. I love it. Okay. This is more of like some of my next questions are more personal ones. So what profession other than what you're doing now would you like to attempt if you had the opportunity?
I could be a carpenter. That's a totally different type of profession, but it's something that I like, and it's creating something. It's a different way of creating something. So now I create software. It's creating hardware, for saying one way.
Okay. And in your time to date in product management, what has been one of the most or two most valuable investments you've made in yourself?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's something that comes a little with personality, but I have done some trainings on negotiating skills. That's super valuable. And something that I need to improve, but it has helped already, is public speaking. I have done some trainings. I need to get better. I need to do better trainings on that. But not necessarily public speaking. It's like storytelling more than public speaking. Like if you know how to tell a story, you will. You need to be careful with that because that can increase your ego, and then you will believe that people can buy your story, not necessarily the right thing. But if you're humble about it, it's an amazing thing.
Okay. Last question on the Fireside format. What are one or two books that you've read that have greatly influenced your life?
related to product or in general?
In general, or it could be related to product. Yeah.
Okay, so related to product. So I will say Marty Kagan's books, Inspiration. Sorry, I forgot the name. I have it there. So there's Empowered and there's the first one. So those are very two good products. Be very open aware that sometimes these leaders will tell you super nice stories, and that's not necessarily how it would work in your company, but it can help you believe what's the ideal situation. So that's on a product side. And on a personal note, like maybe I would say like many years ago when I was a teenage, there is a book that is called Ética para Amador. It's a Spanish writer. It's about ethics. It's about philosophy at the end, and it's about helping you understand, and what we're saying, that there are many different views and you are not always right, and you have, it's more about that, where it's about like remove the ego from yourself and open your mind. It's being mind open. So, so something like if it's a book I would recommend for teenagers because it's more a teenage book, but if you haven't read it, it's still good, and it will get you in the right direction for your brain.
Yeah. No, I love the point about the ego. I've seen so many times some product leaders, even people who call themselves innovators, who just put their ego first, and it doesn't help them, it doesn't help their team, doesn't help the product at the end of the day, and it's really unfortunate when that happens.
Yeah.
So very, very good point. Okay, so this was great. Edoardo, it was a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us today. And as always, thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in and supporting the show, and keep growing our reach. So thank you, everybody.